Early in my career as a software engineer, the relentless hours in front of a computer and the high-pressure work environment made me crave an escape from the urban chaos. I decided to embark on a solo camping trip to the mountains, seeking solace in nature's embrace. That summer, 4 years ago, I chose a remote yet reputedly scenic campground as my destination. Upon arrival, I was taken aback by the site's remoteness. Surrounded by dense forests and distant mountain ranges, the area was devoid of any signs of human presence. I quickly set up my tent and then wandered around the nearby lake, seeking peace in the picturesque surroundings. As night descended, I found myself roasting marshmallows by the campfire under a starlit sky, savoring the solitude. However, as the night deepened, the silence around me grew increasingly oppressive. I reassured myself that these were just the sounds of nature, nothing to be alarmed about. But that night, in my tent, sleep eluded me. I woke up to a strange sensation. The tent door, which I distinctly remembered zipping up, was slightly open. A wave of fear washed over me, but I tried to rationalize it as a lapse on my part. Armed with a flashlight, I stepped out. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but my tent and the nearby parked car. However, I noticed unusual marks on the ground near the campfire, as if someone or something had been lurking around. I attempted to calm myself, thinking it was probably just wildlife. But then, a faint crackling of twigs in the woods set my heart racing. Shining my flashlight, I saw nothing in the darkness. Compelled to investigate, I approached the woods and found broken twigs but no other signs. Still, something felt amiss. Returning to my tent, I resolved to stay inside for the rest of the night. Lying there, I listened intently for any external sounds. Just as I began to relax, I heard quick, rhythmic sounds outside, like someone pacing. Then, a soft brush against the tent fabric. Clutching my flashlight, I was frozen with fear. Suddenly, silence enveloped the campsite again. After a few tense minutes, I ventured out once more. The surrounding trees and the empty campsite offered no clues. But as I turned to re-enter my tent, I caught a glimpse of something unusual in the distant woods. My heart pounded as I stared in that direction, barely making out a shadowy figure moving between the trees. I realized it was time to leave. Rushing back to my car, I trembled as I started the engine. The car roared to life, and I sped away from the campsite, not daring to look back. Shaking in the car, my mind was filled with fear and confusion. Who was that person? Why were they following me? I drove until I reached a police station in a small town. I recounted everything to the police, but apart from taking my statement, there was little they could do. I spent a restless night in a motel in town, pondering the events, unable to find any logical explanation. The next day, accompanied by the police, I returned to the campsite. In daylight, it was calm and serene, a stark contrast to the previous night's terror. We examined my tent and the surrounding area but found no clues except for some footprints. I began to wonder if it had all been a figment of my imagination, perhaps a result of heightened anxiety. But the footprints confirmed that at least someone or something had been there. The police advised me against camping alone again, especially in remote areas. Since then, I have never gone camping alone. This harrowing experience taught me the importance of safety and preparation, making me more vigilant about the subtle signs of danger. Although terrifying, it was a valuable lesson in survival and self-protection. During my college freshman summer break, I set out to solo hike the Rocky Mountains and complete the entire Appalachian Trail, a long-cherished dream of mine for an epic adventure. In early July, I embarked on this hiking journey. The first couple of days were serene, walking along well-marked trails and taking in the stunning scenery. But on the third morning, I found myself in a desolate area, sparsely populated and bleak, stirring a sense of unease within me. I reassured myself though, that I'd soon leave this barren valley behind if I kept moving forward. After trekking about 15 kilometers that day, as planned, I set up camp on an open hillside, which seemed like an ideal spot in the daylight with its welcoming ambience. I quickly pitched my tent, prepared dinner, and sat outside to enjoy the sunset. As darkness enveloped the area, the surroundings plunged into pitch black. The silence of the wilderness was suddenly broken by footsteps in the nearby woods, seemingly slow and deliberate. Initially, I thought they might be small animals, but the heaviness and steady pace of the steps soon suggested otherwise. My heart raced, and the eerie silence around me heightened my anxiety. I turned off my flashlight and stayed as silent as possible. The footsteps circled my tent, sometimes close, sometimes distant. I held my breath, too scared to make any noise. Abruptly, the footsteps ceased right behind my tent, mere meters away. I could hear heavy breathing, sending my heart into my throat. The terrifying thought of a serial killer crossed my mind. Frozen with fear, my mind raced. I knew I had to act. Summoning my courage, I stealthily grabbed a hunting knife and flashlight beside me. Just then, a sinister, low laugh echoed from behind, followed by the sound of rapid footsteps retreating. I was so petrified that I nearly dropped my flashlight. The entire episode was so sudden and surreal. I remained still for over 10 minutes until the sounds completely disappeared. Realizing the stalker had left, I breathed a sigh of relief. It took hours for me to calm down. But come early morning, I heard footsteps outside again, clearer than ever. A dark figure seemed to be pacing around my tent in the woods, getting closer and closer. I grabbed my knife and flashlight once more, resolved to confront the situation. Carefully, I lifted a corner of the tent's entrance and peeked out in the dim moonlight. In that instant, a grimy, large hand suddenly reached in, attempting to open my tent. I screamed in utter horror. The hand hastily withdrew as I heard panicked footsteps fading into the distance. Fearing the stalker's return, I decided to flee the dreadful place at dawn. In the long, anxious hours that followed, I lay awake, alert to every sound, terrified the stalker might return. Finally, as daylight broke, I quickly packed up and fled, not looking back. I didn't stop running until I was well out of the desolate valley. This harrowing encounter has forever scarred my solo camping endeavors. The memory of that horrifying hand invading my tent and its sinister implications still sends shivers down my spine. Whether it was a deranged hermit or a twisted prank, I'm not sure. But one thing is certain, I'll never again venture alone into secluded camping spots, haunted by the fear of a repeat of this terrifying ordeal. On a crisp autumn weekend following my college graduation, I decided to embark on a solo camping trip to a national park on the outskirts of my hometown. As an avid nature photography enthusiast, I was eager to capture the unspoiled beauty of the wilderness. This journey was not just about photography, it was a quest for serenity and solitude amidst nature. Driving through the quaint town and towards the well-known park, I was greeted by the golden hues of fall leaves and the invigorating autumn air. I found an idyllic spot for my tent near a babbling brook, encircled by majestic trees. I set up my photography gear beside the stream, hoping to snap some shots of wildlife and the enchanting evening light. As dusk fell, I prepared my dinner inside the tent. The forest around me came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, creating a symphony that was both eerie and calming. Post-dinner, I sat at the entrance of my tent, soaking in the tranquil isolation of the night. However, soon, I began to hear peculiar noises emanating from the distant woods. Initially, I dismissed them as the sounds of nocturnal animals, but they grew closer and more ambiguous, stirring unease within me. Concerned for my safety, I retreated into my tent and zipped it up. In the dead of night, I was jolted awake by unusual sounds. Something seemed to be brushing against my tent. My heart raced as I strained my ears, hearing low, muffled grunts that were both strange and familiar, instilling a sense of fear. Cautiously, I cracked open a slit in the tent zipper to peer outside. Bathed in moonlight, I noticed that some items near my tent appeared to have been tampered with. Various objects were scattered around. Filled with apprehension, I decided to step out and investigate. Flashlight in hand, I approached the items quietly. Upon closer inspection, it was evident that they had been deliberately disturbed. Some food was opened, and my photography equipment was strewn about. Scanning the area for any clues, I suddenly heard rustling noises from deep within the woods. Despite feeling foreboding, my curiosity propelled me to explore the unknown. I cautiously ventured into the forest, the flashlight casting flickering shadows among the trees. As I moved deeper, I caught a glimpse of a vague figure darting between the trees. My pulse quickened as I attempted to discern whether it was a person or an animal. A wave of unfamiliar fear washed over me. Resolving to uncover the identity of the figure, I silently followed its trail deeper into the forest. However, in my focused pursuit, I soon realized I had lost my bearings. The trees around me looked indistinguishable, and the moonlight offered only sparse illumination. Anxiety set in as I acknowledged the possibility of being lost. Attempting to recall the route back, everything seemed blurry. After what felt like hours of wandering, I was overwhelmed with exhaustion and despair. Trying to find a signal on my phone proved futile. With a sense of helplessness, I accepted that I might have to spend the night in this unfamiliar forest. I located a relatively open area and decided to wait there until daylight. The forest at night was filled with unsettling sounds, and every whisper of the wind through the leaves sent shivers down my spine. After enduring a long and fearful night, dawn finally broke. Using the morning light for guidance, I began to navigate my way back to the campsite. After several hours of trekking, I finally found my way back. Weary, I returned to the campsite, hastily packed my gear, and decided to leave this haunting place at once. Driving home, my mind was overrun with questions and fears. What was that figure? Why had it appeared near my campsite? What were those footprints and signs of disturbance? This solo camping experience taught me a profound lesson about the paramount importance of safety in the unknown wilderness. Henceforth, whenever I planned to camp, I became much more cautious, vowing to never encounter such a terrifying ordeal again.